Hello and welcome to this Shireburn Academy and Association of Directors podcast. This podcast is aiming to support the development of directors and boards in Malta. My name is Mark Watkinson. I'm the host for today. My background is around 40 years in finance, during which I spent 4 years as CEO in Malta. I also lead the Association of Directors initiative in Malta, and I'm a trained chartered director from the UK. I'm delighted that today we have Giorgio with us, and John is the chairman of Shireburn. And today, John, if you could kick off and just give us a sense of yourself and a little bit of the Shireburn journey over the years.
Okay, well, thank you for hosting this event, Mark, first of all. It's a privilege for me to be with you on this. As far as myself, really my background is a technical background, a software technical background. I did my education in the UK, and I came back to Malta accidentally and set up Shireburn in 1983. So you can imagine those days, that was very, very early days in the technology sector. So we weren't called an IT company because IT didn't exist as a term, even in those days. As far as me personally, I would consider myself to be a curious person, always looking at how things work and coming up with different ways how they could perhaps work better. And I think that curiosity is very important. Skill, I suppose you'd call it, to have. I'm the father of two daughters, and recently grandfather of
congratulations,
a grandson, a 4-month-old grandson. And I'm a very keen sailor, and I travel a lot, both for work, for Rotary, which is one of my big passions, and also for pleasure.
Fantastic, John. During the Shireburn journey over the years, I mean, if we go all the way back to 1983. Can you give us a sense of 2 or 3 real challenges that you had during that journey, and how did you address those challenges?
Well, I think the first major challenge that I had faced, like many entrepreneurs, is actually making the leap of faith from being a one-man band to being a one-plus band.
Right.
And that's actually very difficult to do because you're scraping a living as a one-man band. You're usually undercapitalized. And what happens is that by you taking on other people, you have to share part of your earnings with them initially
Yes.
to seed their ability to then contribute further to the pot.
Yeah.
So I would say that was the first initial challenge, which was quite significant.
And how did you tackle that? How did you? You learned as you went on, because they always say with businesses, it's the first 10 people, then it's the first 50, and then it's the first 100 that really make a difference.
Yes. I was fortunate in that about 2 years after I started, so I was still a one-man band, I was given the opportunity to go on a US government visitors program event, which was aimed at people in the technology business who were one-man bands.
Right.
And the objective, we were 18 of us from 18 different countries around the world, literally around the world. And the aim of this was to try and get us to move beyond that one-man band environment.
Right.
And essentially, there was the realization quite quickly there that when you are a one-man band, especially when you're providing a service which is very dependent on you, you're selling hours.
Right.
And when you're selling hours, there's a limit to the number of hours in the day, and there's a limit to the rate at which those hours can actually be monetized. So one of the key things that you need to do is you need to be able to actually increase the number of hours.
Right.
And that increasing the number of hours can only be done by taking on other people.
By leveraging other people, the work of other people.
Correct.
Yeah.
However, that's not enough because ultimately it then still becomes a very personal, hours-based business. You're selling milk, which goes off every day.
Yep.
You need to convert that milk to cheese. And the cheese in this case is the software.
Right.
So when I talk of the software, you can go down the route of developing one-off type solutions, or you can create software products which are then able to be repeated through different businesses. And
Understood.
that's obviously the holy grail.
Yeah.
And that realization of that milk to cheese type of concept was, I think,
Was a real breakthrough for you.
it was a
Yeah.
breakthrough.
Yeah.
It was a breakthrough for me. And I remember when it happened,
Yeah.
funnily enough. You know, it happened as a result of having a conversation in my house with a partner of ours from New Zealand that we used to sell. Actually, we still sell that product. And he actually explained this concept to me. So I can actually picture when that happened. And it was a light bulb moment.
So it was people, and then the realization of, packaging, how you would package the proposition.
Correct. So rather than someone coming to you and saying, I'm in, I don't know, the pharmaceutical business and I need a particular piece of software to address this business need, and you go out and you create that.
Right.
And then someone else turns up and says, I've got another business need which is different. You focus and you identify the actual market opportunity, and opportunity identification is a very big skill that is worth cultivating.
So the whole width of the market opportunity, as apart from a simple solution, you're providing a simple solution.
So you actually say you're going to develop a solution which is not addressing the need of that pharmacist. I use the pharmacy as just as an example, but you're going to create a solution that you'll then be able to take to 80, 100, 200 different pharmacies. Just to use that as an example.
Were there any occasions where you'd reached a certain size and, the next step forward, the barrier, the mountain you had to climb, you thought, oh, can I do this?
I'm not sure there was ever that sort of, can I do this? I was pretty confident that we could do this.
Yeah.
Don't forget also the business was started at a time when there was a lot less competition.
Yeah.
Although ironically, we're back at that same situation today.
Yeah.
So many of the companies that we used to compete with in the 90s are no longer around. I think I was confident that we could do it.
So you climbed that mountain in that case.
Yes.
Great, John. Thank you very much. Now, I'm conscious. Obviously, we've known each other for a little while. I'm conscious that both within yourself as well as Shireburn, within your sort of DNA, there's a strong sense of continual learning or continuous learning, training. And I think that, to me, is reflected in, I think, your history back in '83 when the company was originally started as a training entity, but more recently around the decision to create the Shireburn Academy.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about what was the thinking about creating the Shireburn Academy?
So you're absolutely right. I think learning is part of our DNA. We have a situation whereby curiosity is the thing that drives learning, doesn't it?
Right.
If you're not curious, you don't bother to learn. So ultimately, the first thing that you need to stimulate is people's curiosity to investigate and to look into things and say, there could be a better way of doing this, or whatever it may be. So curiosity is the basis for learning.
Right.
And then learning is something that is either acquired formally or informally. So a lot of people are doing their own learning. If you notice, I'm using the word learning rather than training.
Yeah.
To me, there's a very big difference between the two, and I have a Rotary-related story to that, which I can, if we've got time,
Please
go into. So it's about the responsibility that everyone has for their own learning. Now, luckily, in the technology space, if you don't continually improve your skill set,
keep yourself up to date,
and keep yourself up to date, then obviously you're going to be in an area of difficulty. Although what a lot of people do is they move more into a management stream rather than a technical stream. That's sometimes possible. Sometimes those same people don't necessarily have the managing skills or the management skills, so it can become difficult. So that's important. But the other thing, and here actually I have to do give a shout out to my co-director Franco Gallia, because Franco has always been a very collaborative person.
Right.
So very often what happens is you get a person who's struggling with a problem, and they don't necessarily find help. And they don't find help because there's a certain amount of competition
Right.
within the
Yes.
corporate sector that if I'm helping you, I'm giving you a leg up, maybe you're going to advance more than I. Franco never had that sort of culture. So he was always the person who helped mentor people and
Very good.
pull them along. And that created the culture. And here I think Franco was the one who created that culture
That
within
learning
within
cut.
the business.
Yeah.
And that's percolated through people. And when we've had people who don't subscribe to that sort of culture, not just to the learning, but the collaborative nature, they've never worked. So the culture at Shireburn is one that if you don't fit into that idea of sharing, you're not going to succeed within the company.
Understood. And the sort of genesis between, but from taking it from that sort of learning culture in the organization, the training basis going all the way back to 83, the genesis of the academy was to take it from technical training and to a broader piece.
Yes, I mean we need to invert the way that we look at the situation, and we can't look at it from our perspective that we want to train our customers in our software to make them more successful in using the software, and as a result they will make more use of the software, become ambassadors for the software,
Right.
and reduce the need to consume our support services.
Absolutely.
So there is, it's not completely
Definite
altruistic.
bottom line benefit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's an important part. But we need to invert it to actually say, how are our customers going to be successful? Rather than how are we going to be successful, how is the customer successful? Because, the value derived by our customer has to be our driving force.
Okay.
And for our customer to be successful, they need to have a good understanding of our software and how it works and how it can be applied. But they also need to have the domain knowledge. They need to understand what the opportunities are, what the changing regulatory framework is. Give you an example. We've done a lot of work, and people are going to find some great value from this work in the EU Transparency Directive. Okay, so that's quite a complex piece of legislation. Initially, it's going to be coming out later this year, in the next few months, some initial
So you've been
legislation.
preparing companies for this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've been developing the software modules that will allow them to meet the needs of the directive, but also they need to understand what the requirements of the directive are to be able to adapt their business, and actually in this case also their culture of business, to be able to conform with that. Now, we could either stand back and say, well, here's our software, here's the module, it will allow you to do A, B, and C, and we'll train you how to use the product. But here what we're doing is we're actually training them, equipping them with the skills to enable them to take some of the business decisions that they need to take, which will then be supported by our product.
So you've really broadened the offering from a purely technical training perspective, as you say, into broadening it into broader domain knowledge, bringing in programs and learning opportunities around changes in regulations and so on.
Yes, and it goes beyond that. For instance, if you're an HR manager in, or particularly even recruitment managers, because today in larger companies you have managers whose responsibility is recruitment, and they have departments of people involved in that. And we all know that companies are struggling to meet their recruitment needs. Then what we try to do is we try to upskill them to be able to address the challenges. And
So they can be more efficient.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not just through the software.
Yeah.
Okay, sometimes we've done courses which don't mention our software
Yeah.
at all.
Okay.
This isn't about the software. It's about building the right culture. It's about being able to interview people correctly, being able to make assessments, performance management, all of that, because you need to do the performance management
Correct.
during the probationary period too. So this performance management isn't something that happens a year after someone's been engaged.
So the whole, because I'm impressed at the investment that you've done, because you've had a significant build out in Sky Parks. You've
Yes.
taken brand new office space. You have top of the range training rooms. So this clearly is a passion of the business, and it's clearly you see it as an opportunity to help your clients to the next level.
Yes, that's a fair assessment, I would say.
So, with respect to the work that we're doing together, both the Shireburn Academy and the Association of Directors, can you tell us a little bit about, or our listeners, a little bit about the plans around the certificate that we are looking to launch on the role of a director? I get a sense from our conversations and so on that you feel quite strongly that there's a real need for investment to help upskill directors and upskill boards.
That's absolutely right. And I will start from our own board. So I don't think that being a particularly good director in the formal sense of a director.
Find it very challenging.
Yes.
There's a very small number that are really excellent.
Sure, I'm sure. I'm very interested to do this because what's happening is that ultimately the board of a company is obviously of great importance. If it's not, it should be. Particularly in respect of setting the strategy and corporate governance. And these are all things which are becoming more and more important.
Right.
If we look at governance itself as an issue, it is absolutely crucial that our companies, not just in Malta, this is everywhere, implement methods of improved governance
Right.
of their work. We're required to do so by regulations, as an increasing set of regulations comes out into the field. But we should actually be doing this from our own desire in any case. And we're here talking about ethics, integrity.
And all the legislation around this.
Correct. I actually think that most boards, apart from, you were CEO of HSBC, so you were working with no doubt, a highly professional board.
Yes, I was very fortunate. We had a combination of both local directors, but also international directors. So it was a nice mix.
Nice mix. Most companies don't have that benefit. So we're a company of 100 people. We're 95 people, I think, at the moment, in fact. We should have a stronger board than we have. And like us, there are many other companies, including ones which are smaller than us, which still need to have better boards, because you need better governance, but you also need better strategy. You need better financial oversight. You need better controls. And really here, the desire and where the association, the Malta Association of Directors and Shireburn see a commonality is that we want to work together to drive improvements in those boards. Because by driving improvements in those boards, we drive improvements in those companies.
Yeah. Oh,
it's as simple as that.
I completely agree with you. And I've lived and worked in 11 countries, and I've met many companies, and you can absolutely tell those companies with the strong governance, strong board. But I'm particularly interested in our discussions around the certificate program that we'll be launching in October. We were very focused on sort of three key areas. The first being strategy. Now, a lot of boards, they let management run the strategy. but it's actually the board's
Board's responsibility,
responsibility
absolutely.
to design and monitor the strategy. But I know you were also keen on leadership, so we've got a particularly strong module around the board's role to help lead the organization, which is critical. And you touched on the third area that the certificate will cover, which is really around governance. What is my role as a director? And it's difficult in some circumstances where people confuse being a shareholder and a director, and you need to split the two, because once you become a director, your responsibility and your legal responsibility is to the company
Company.
and not the shareholders. And a lot of people struggle with that. So I think it's a powerful area to examine under
Yes.
a program.
I think that's particularly the case in the Malta context, because a lot of the businesses are family businesses, and it becomes that line
Yeah.
between the family side and the company side is, a difficult path to tread.
Very difficult, and I understand that.
And I think going back to the requirement to improve the boards, back to the family business type of idea, is that very often people end up being directors of companies because they happen to be within the family
Right.
that actually is the owner of that business.
Right.
And therefore they get elevated into a board position without necessarily having had any formal training
Right.
in that process.
Right.
And I was having this discussion with someone who is a CEO of quite a large group in Malta, with a large number of different companies and things like that. As soon as I mentioned this, it resonated absolutely clearly
Yeah.
for him. He said, sort of, definitely, this is something that would provide a lot of value to the various directors we have within our companies, most of whom are family members,
Right.
who are there because they're family members.
Yeah, I think it's a very powerful opportunity, and I'm delighted that both Sherman Academy and the Association of Directors can work on this project. And I'm very excited. We'll get, hopefully we'll launch stage 1 in October, stage 2 in February, and stage 3 in March. And I think by covering off strategy, leadership, and governance in those 3 stages, we'll give people a really good grounding, both as an individual director, but also as a steer for the overall board. John, thank you very much for that and the background on Shireburn. Could you give us a little bit of a sense of some of the major challenges that Shireburn had on its growth journey? Perhaps a couple of examples and how you addressed these.
Yes, certainly. I think one of the most significant challenges, which was not unique to Shireburn by any means, but is a feature of any company operating in the software and the technology space, is obviously keeping up to date with technology,
Right.
clearly. However, when you see it in the context of a software products company, one of the problems is that you may create a product which is then overtaken by a new technology, not because that product doesn't work in terms of its functionalities
Right.
and capability,
But there's been a technical leap.
there's been a technical leap. It could be the way of delivery. It could be the user interface. So I'll give you an example. When we started developing software, we started doing so before the introduction of Windows.
Right. Oh, wow.
Okay, so
Okay.
there'll be people listening to this who weren't born
Yes.
at that particular stage. So we developed our software prior to Windows. Then when Windows came out, you need to make the necessary changes to adapt or redevelop your software
Right.
into the Windows environment. And then you need to do the same. We needed to do the same thing for the web and eventually for the cloud. But the way you do that, you could take a shortcut and adapt your existing software to get it to work in a new environment.
Right.
Or you can actually say, well, it is a new environment and it is so new that you want to take the benefit of what is being offered by that new environment. So what you're going to do is you're going to have two parallel tracks. You're going to continue
Your
to
existing,
exactly to develop maybe less fast on the development side, but certainly continue to support your clients with the first phase product, for want of a better word. And at the same time, you've got a parallel track of usually different people who are actually creating the new environment.
Right.
Why different people? Because it's very difficult to do both. And also because it's a different mindset usually. The pre-Windows and the post-Windows developer is a different animal.
So you had different teams running these
Correct.
these separate. Well, you had a team which was doing care and maintenance on the existing, but then you had a fresh team looking at the new opportunity, the new technical leap.
Correct. Now, in actual fact, what we did, there was a bit of a hybrid. So we did have some people that moved from, let me call it the legacy, into the new phase.
Right.
Because it's important also to have that continuity of knowledge of what there currently is in your product suite. But essentially, yes, it's a different track of people. And of course, there you need to ensure that you are taking on the right people, training people correctly, but also motivating those that may consider themselves as being left behind.
More of a sort of legacy product owner.
Correct.
Yeah.
Motivating them to stick to that until you then launch your new infrastructure,
Yeah.
and then they move along into that, possibly in a different role.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. Now that's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
And most companies, such as ours, struggle to do that. But we've done it 4 times.
Wow. Okay.
So we've gone from the pre-Windows to Windows to web to the cloud. And so when we talk of the cloud, for instance, if we use that as an example, which is fresher in people's minds, there are many companies that what they do is they take their existing product and they lease servers on the cloud and continue to run their same software, but on a cloud infrastructure rather than an infrastructure which is in-house within their client.
On-prem. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, that's obviously the easiest thing to do, but it doesn't give extra value to the customer. I mean, it gives very little extra value to the customer. Whereas if you can move your technology base so that you exploit the capabilities of the cloud, it's very different. So give you an example there. Our Indigo environment operates on one cloud-based infrastructure for all of our customers. So we have 160,000 employees being paid and managed on their HR through this platform. It's by far the largest platform in Malta. And we have about 8,500 customers who are doing that. But they're all on the same system. But that system at night may be running on one server, and at 8:15 in the morning may actually be running on 15.
Wow.
And it automatically scales up and down.
And that's the beauty of the cloud.
Well, that's the beauty of the cloud when you develop it in such a way that you utilize these facilities. If you're just moving your software onto the cloud by putting it into a virtual server, you don't have that benefit.
And so, as you're saying, Shireburn has really gone through this transition 4 times. So it's really built quite an expertise in managing these transitions and getting the best out of the next technical leap or transition.
Yes, I think that's a fair assessment. Yes.
John, we had a little conversation about the new world of AI. What's Shireburn's thoughts about that? Is that something that will come into future products?
It's already in our products. So AI is a big thing. It's a big word, and it
covers many sins.
Absolutely, and it means different things to different people. But as far as Shireburn is concerned, obviously we're utilizing AI capabilities to allow us to increase our efficiency on development and things like that. But one of the particularly interesting areas is that because we have 165,000 odd employees on our platform. We've got a very rich data set. And this is where we apply AI capabilities to actually be able to allow companies to benchmark themselves
Very good. Okay.
against other companies in their sector without obviously being able to identify anyone. And in fact, if you're in a sector where there are a very small number of operators, we don't even provide such a breadth of capability.
But that's an enormous. Having obviously worked in the financial services sector all my life, benchmarking between positions, broad bands of positions, has always been a huge headache.
Absolutely.
So if Sherman is able to generate this data, that gives you a pretty strong competitive advantage.
It does. And we have our Insights module. And what Insights does is it allows you, depending on the different subscription that you take, some is free and other is at a charge. Insights allows you to actually better understand your performance. So if you are, for instance, in a particular sector, I don't know, let me think of a manufacturing sector as an example, and you're looking at your sick leave rates,
Right.
you can compare your sick leave rates with others who are in a similar sector to you. And of course, you can drill into it to actually notice that in a particular department, or usually it's under a particular manager.
Okay.
It's the manager that's the problem. It's not the department as
sick
such.
leave spikes.
Correct.
Okay.
So you can identify these sort of very insightful pieces of information. And that's where AI becomes very valuable. Even in the recruitment process, if you're actually hiring, you might actually want to hire for a particular job. And one of the things you want to do is you want to improve the job description that you've written.
Right.
So that when you're publishing your job description through our recruitment module, what that will do is it will allow you to actually improve the text, the wording in such a way that it becomes more appealing.
Both appealing and accurate and
Correct.
yes.
Correct. Obviously, you need to not just throw something out just using AI and leave it on its own, but it actually, with AI, you generate something which you then need to curate. But you're not starting from a blank slate. So there are a huge number of opportunities around AI. And, a lot of people are talking about AI being very disruptive and people losing their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And, any new technology is always disruptive.
Correct.
The horse and cart was disrupted by the car. It didn't mean it wasn't necessarily a good disruption. And obviously it generated other areas of business. AI is a bit more tricky in that area, clearly. But I'm confident that it will actually assist companies and individuals to operate at much
and have a more
higher
positive influence overall. I think, obviously it's quite scary to begin with, and that it's quite scary and worrying. But the capabilities that it will provide both individuals, and companies, are very promising and very promising indeed.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's going to be an interesting next phase.
And just, if I may, changing tack a little bit, around, Shireburn competitive advantages of the business. Do you want to, spend a few moments just talking about culture in the organization and what separates you, in your view, from many other companies in your space?
I'm not sure we use culture as a competitive advantage. I think that's the net result is you have a competitive advantage. But we believe that you need to have a good culture.
Right.
Now, if that then gives you a competitive advantage, so much the better. So what is a good culture? I already brought up the point of the collaborative nature. That we don't have people who are isolationist and create a barrier around themselves in terms of their sharing of knowledge. We have people in the company who are very, very generous with their knowledge,
Mhm.
and that's an important element of
This sort
the
of
culture.
sharing, this natural sharing. People are not building walls,
Correct,
creating
correct.
empires. They're the walls are down and people are sharing the work they're doing
Yes,
and willing to mentor, etc.
yes. So when we've had people in the business who don't subscribe to that point of view, or maybe subscribe to it but don't actually follow it,
Yeah.
because they're two different things, they've not worked out.
Yeah.
So the culture obviously goes broader than just the sharing of
Yeah.
the knowledge, but we do have a familial culture.
Right.
So we do have quite a protective culture. Some would say we're too protective. We don't actually necessarily put people on the spot as much as we could do, but it works.
Yeah, but I think the positive nature of the culture that I've seen in Shireburn is reflected in some of the longevity of the staff.
Correct. And the retention levels that we enjoy, actually, both of our staff, but also of our customers. We've had customers who've been customers of ours for 36, 38
Wow.
years.
Okay.
So it's really quite extraordinary. But that longevity that you referred to um, is of immense value to us,
Yeah.
because you don't lose the knowledge that has been built up.
The corporate knowledge.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. Sometimes a bit of churn is a useful thing also. So it's not, ultimately the objective shouldn't be zero,
And no one ever leaves.
and no one ever
Yeah.
leaves.
Yeah.
Also because people need to have positions to move into, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. But they've got to leave for a good reason.
Yeah.
They're leaving because they are they've grown to a particular stage that they want to take that growth further, and see another organization as the place to do that. That's fine. But ultimately, it's that growth, that personal development and personal growth, which is
Which goes
particularly
back to the
important.
learning that we talked about,
Correct.
and people's own responsibility for learning and developing themselves, but also having an opportunity to develop in an environment.
Correct. The other thing, which is a very strong part of the culture, is integrity and ethics.
Yeah.
That is something which sadly is diminishing over time in the world in general, and it's something that we fight strongly for. So when someone is actually thought not to be following that line, we're
Yeah.
very swift.
And it's reflected in deliveries and commitments to timelines,
Yes,
etc.
yes. It's an issue that needs to be
Yeah.
a fundamental core
Yeah.
on which the business is built. And that's something I think that has been inherited down the line. Also, I suppose initially I got that from my father,
Yeah.
who got it from his father. My father was an architect, and he was in partnership for 50 years
Wow.
with another architect, and they never even had a contract between them.
Wow.
Those days are obviously gone,
Mm.
but that level of integrity and ethics
And trust.
is something that
Is a strong
is a
part,
yes,
part of the Shireburn,
correct,
what makes you
correct.
Shireburn. John, looking to the future for Shireburn itself, what are your thoughts about future-proofing your board or strengthening your board further in order to, address some of the clear volatility and challenges that are coming down the pike?
Well, I think obviously the board is key in this area. So the main area where one would need to focus, and where we need to focus, is specifically looking at strengthening the board, and that is both deepening and widening the board. So one of the elements to that is we need to have a larger board, a more effective board with a number of different perspectives, including people from outside our industries as non-exec directors, etc. So that's an important element to this. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that our board is well equipped, and we're back to the discussion of the academy.
Right.
So in the same way that we think that other companies need to have their board strengthened, we need to eat our own dog food.
Right. Okay.
and we need to do the same. So we need to ensure that our board is broader and better equipped. So being able to go on these types of courses ourselves that the academy is going to be running is a key element to the success even within Shireburn. Also, the other thing which one always has to be careful about is succession
Right.
and succession planning. And succession planning is very often thought of as a long-term thing when someone gets to an age of needing to retire, etc., or wanting to retire. But succession planning is also even more important for cause-based succession. So if someone has a situation of an illness or a death or whatever, and you've got a key person within the business, you need to make sure that your plans are robust to survive those types of situations.
And it's exactly this sort of thing that the certificate in the role of a director is seeking to help directors and boards by at least highlighting the risk. Exactly as you say, the need for proper succession planning, not being overly reliant on any one individual, and having a proper pack at the board level analyzing what are the risks, and also, as I say, looking at your key people risks and succession planning. So I totally agree with you. I think that's an important part.
I can give you an example of this, which is very, very fresh in my mind. As we were talking about earlier, recently there was a development in my Rotary world. So I'm very involved in Rotary, an international organization with 1.2 million members. And we had a new president who took over on the 1st of July. And I was asked to be their aide, which is really a bit of a chief of staff type of role for an organization of 1.2 million people.
Yeah.
So it's it's a huge role. But because of my corporate background, one of the first questions that I asked was, what's our risk within this company, or within this organization, I should say? What are the existential risks that the organization is running? And one of those is cybersecurity.
Yes.
Okay, so there are a number of others, but one of the first things that I did was I actually started the process to get briefed on what the position is in terms of the defenses that have been put in place.
So building a map, and this is, absolutely a critical part, be it an organization, be it a board,
Correct.
is mapping out your risks.
Correct.
And for the leadership and for the board to really be able to put their hand on the top 3 or 4 issues, and not only these are the issues, but what's
the mitigation?
Yeah, what's the mitigation?
Well, in actual fact, at Shireburn, we have been certified to ISO 27001, which is a very, very stiff, I would say, compliance requirement. And part of that process is having an up-to-date risk register with the mitigation and the potential impacts, and we test against that. Yesterday I was in the academy, actually, because the academy is on the first floor at Sky Parks, and the rest of the office is on the 3rd floor. We now have over 1,000 square meters of space there. And one of the things that happened was that there was an interruption of the network between upstairs and downstairs, which was actually caused intentionally by our infrastructure team as part of the test, to see how the infrastructure that we built would actually cope with that.
Yeah, and this is
test constantly.
You definitely need to test constantly, along with your cyber risk, etc., etc.
But this is part of compliance. Governance.
This is
governance is not about our people pinching things from your storeroom.
Yeah.
It's actually addressing these types
Yeah.
of
Have you
issues.
thought out? Have you mapped out
Yes.
processes and so on? And so,
And if you've not been used to,
Hmm.
so if you're a new director on a company, you may not actually even think that that is an issue that you need to be
Yeah.
considering.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to address through the academy and this certificate course
Yeah.
with the Malta Association of Directors.
Totally agreed. Totally agreed.
Mark, I'm going to turn to you now and ask you a question. I'm going to invert the situation. And I'm going to ask you to consider, what if the biggest threat or difficulty within the business is actually you? You, not as in you personally, by the way.
Absolutely. John, quite honestly, this is something that, virtually every family business and virtually every SME faces. And, the biggest risk to these businesses is the leadership, overly dependent on one person.
Mhm.
And, if that one person, for some reason, is no longer able to run the business, then the business enters, into a downward spiral, and more times than not will fail, or have to be disposed, etc. So this is a huge risk run every day by thousands of companies. But certainly from a good governance perspective, and I know that some of the smaller businesses, SMEs, and so on are uncomfortable having outsiders sitting on their boards, non-executive directors, and so on. But honestly, if you are looking to future-proof your business and looking to mitigate the risk of you, the CEO, the owner, the chairperson of the board, of being the biggest risk, then it pays dividends to have one, two, maybe even three very smart, very capable non-executive directors who are able to lead the business, lead the family through a process where the majority owner, the CEO, the chairperson cannot operate for some reason. I've seen it work on a number of occasions, and it is a really, really important fallback position for businesses. Some businesses say, but we're too small to have a non-executive director. You don't have to be big to have a non-executive director. But I do tell you, you've got to think hard how you are going to fill that place and what you want the non-executive director to add. There's a debate in the world of, governance, etc. Should I bring on board a non-executive director who is an absolute expert in my area or in a particular area? Or should I bring in someone who has a broader, more general knowledge about business? And you have to make that that call yourself. But I would certainly say to our listeners that you need to think carefully, because at the end of the day, you may be the biggest risk to your business. And if you're going to mitigate that, I really would encourage you to think about, bolstering your board and bringing in one, two non-executive directors who you trust and who can add real value. I hope that answers the question.
Yes,
there,
I
John.
think so. I
Yeah.
think so. Thank you very much for that answer.
John, thank you very much indeed. I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of our allotted time, but before we go, just to give our listeners perhaps a little bit of a better sense of yourself, I have a couple of quick fire questions which I would like to pose to you.
Uh-oh.
So the first of these questions is, what's the best book every board member should read and why?
Well, I would say Nudge.
Nudge. Okay.
Nudge. Richard Thaler.
Yeah.
Well worth a read, not just for board members in general.
Fantastic.
It's behavioral science.
Behavioral science. The second one is, what boardroom behavior irritates you the most and why?
I would actually say lack of the ability to take on someone else's point of view and consider it correctly. So being intransigent maybe is the
Okay.
best way of
And sort of
describing, sticking to your position.
deaf to someone else's point of view.
I would say.
The most valuable boardroom ritual that you use?
I'm not sure that we use a particular ritual as
Yeah,
such. We always have lunch afterwards, but
yeah.
not before. Nothing very specific as far as a ritual is concerned, but it's very important to sound out ideas beforehand with your team.
Very good, great. And what's your favorite quotation, John?
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah, I love that one as
Yeah.
well. I think that's
Uh, I find it a bit frustrating at times because very often I find myself wanting to go fast.
you're fast and far.
Fast and far,
Fine, yeah.
definitely. I always want.
Yeah. Fantastic, thank you. And what's your most significant professional insight?
Professional insight. I would say I'm a big believer in opportunity identification. Five people stand at the top of a mountain. They look on the landscape, but they don't all see the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think being able to identify opportunities in that landscape is very, very important, together with the curiosity that I mentioned earlier.
And a real skill, if you can get that,
Yes.
that's. What's the worst professional advice that you've ever received?
Calm down, go slow, take your time.
Right.
In technology, in the technology space, that's can be quite dangerous.
Not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you changed your mind about with respect to boards over the years?
Diversity.
Yep.
And I don't mean only diversity from a gender perspective, but ultimately it's about diversity of thought, because that's what gender diversity feeds
Right.
into. So it's having different people with different points of view, different perspectives, who add value to a discussion, I would say.
Fantastic. And how do you feel you're better today as a board member than when you started?
Well, that presupposes that I am. I think in my older age,
Yep.
I have become a bit more patient. Many will dispute that. So a bit more thoughtful about things, I would say.
Excellent. Thank you. And three things our listeners should take away from our conversation today.
Keep learning. Be curious, which is part of that. And specifically improve your skills to the domain. And the responsibility of a director today is not insignificant. You need to treat that with the respect and the risk that comes with that. So I would say, measure the risk and equip yourself to be able to address that risk.
Fantastic. John, thank you very much indeed for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up. And,
Me too.
I'd like to say, also on your behalf of the Association of Directors, thank you very much to yourself, to Yasmin, your CEO and daughter, and to Shireburn for the support that you're showing. And I'm very excited to work with Shireburn on the certificate program. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.